Good morning, YouTube. Let's talk a little bit about some of my favorite knives that I like to take when I'm out backpacking. When I started 10 years ago really getting into the outdoors, I kind of started with more bushcrafty type trips and gear, and then over time slowly progressed towards more lightweight backpacking, and then even verging into the ultralight area on some trips. So today I'm going to go the opposite of that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the lightweight gear that I use now, and then some of the heavier weight gear that I've used in previous trips. I would also mention that the majority of my backpacking now is done in the Sierras or lower parts of the Cascade Range, which is typically a very dry climate that I'm not doing a lot of fire prep and stuff for. My knife selection would change a little bit depending on the type of trip and if I was going to be making bigger or more fires, or if I was on the East Coast where it was really wet. Let's start with my current and lightest option I typically use, which is the Swiss Army Knife Classic. I love this little knife. I've been using one of these for years. I've probably lost and bought these little things multiple times. I've come up with a new system now in order to keep and get access to this really quickly, which is nice. I'm able to store it in a side pocket of my ULA. I use some a little bit of webbing and some fabric and stitched up a nice little holder for these, so I can store these and get to them quickly while I'm on trail. I like this knife for two reasons. One, it weighs next to nothing. Two, the blade, the steel on the Swiss Army knives do sharpen really well. I find it's a good stainless steel. Some stainless steels I've had before don't work the best. I do like the scissors. They make cutting tape a lot easier than trying to cut it with a knife. So I actually use probably the scissors more than I use anything. The toothpick and the tweezers are kind of useless, and the file is not super helpful, except I have used this little screwdriver tip to tighten my tripod. I've had go loose, and then I've also had trekking poles where I've had to actually use this. So the little tiny screwdriver is not terribly not a bad thing to have. Most of my Swiss Army knives, as we go through here, have a little piece of cord on them that's bright green, just so I can see them if I drop it, and then it makes it a little easier when I pull them out of the pouch. So this is what I use for the majority of my trips now. If I'm not going to be having big fires, if it's going to be pretty dry, then this is the knife to go to. Next up on the list, going a little bit heavier, is a bigger Swiss Army knife. Same thing, it's quite a bit heavier. It has a bigger blade. This thing is, if I'm thinking back to kind of bushcrafty terms, this Swiss Army Knife Farmer is probably one I've used the most out of any of the knives we're going to show today. So I've kept this in my pocket for years. I love it because you can whip up some crazy amount of curls with this knife. You can, this blade is just the right size, the right angle, and if you get the right wood, this thing is a curls master. You can make so many shavings with it so fast. The only problem is it's not the most comfortable. If you're holding it, I mean, it's better than the Classic, way too small, but it is not the best for long-term use. But you can actually get, you know, all your fingers on the knife. Again, sharpens up great. I've had a couple different versions of this kind of size and knife. The one that I think I've most recently carried, I like the scissors better than the saw. I know another one I used to use had a saw on it. I never found use for the saw. Rather have the big scissors, but mainly on this, I'm just using the knife. This knife coupled with a small saw, like the Baco Laplander, that was one I used forever, or one of the small Silkies. That is a great super light combo in which you're able to do some wood prep, and then this will easily cut cut any food up you have. Like I usually eat a bunch of cheese and or salami and stuff like that, so I find this is a great option. Next knife up on the list is the Kestrel EDC titanium knife. Had this for about a year, and I like it quite a bit. It's actually a little lighter than a Swiss Army knife, the fuller size ones, but it is a bit bigger. This is an interesting knife. It's handmade in California, so I think that's kind of a cool thing. Super lightweight with the sheath and the knife. I think it's only like less than an ounce, so it's very lightweight. It's an interesting knife in that it's a titanium knife, and then it's got on the other side has tungsten carbide, which is like what they use in drill bits and things. And as you sharpen it, it's only a single bevel, so the titanium kind of wears away, exposing more and more of the tungsten carbide, and it is almost creates like a little serration. Like you can feel it when you cut through stuff. It's kind of like a little little sawtooth on it. Typically used for ultralight backpack hunters. A lot of the reviews talk about guys skinning, you know, entire elks with this thing, and they don't have to sharpen it. So it stays very sharp. It fits your hand like surprisingly well for being a skeletonized little knife. I got this because I thought it was kind of cool and it was on sale. I've always wanted one of these. The positives with this is it's cool because it's full size. This thing will cut up salami and cheese like none other. I've made curls with it. It works okay. The bevel's a little different. But yeah, you can make curls with it, so it works okay for that. Not the most comfortable to be pressing on this thing long term, or with a lot of force, but it works pretty good. The sheath is nice. Again, super lightweight. It fits in here very securely. The only trouble I have with this is mounting it. It's too big to fit in a hip belt pocket. I could put it in the back mesh part of a backpack, but I always feel like I'm going to lose it or it's going to fall out. So it usually rides inside my backpack. You could put a piece of cord on here and do a neck knife, but I'm not a huge fan of walking around with a neck knife while I'm backpacking. That seems excessive. But really cool knife. If there was a better way of mounting this externally and I felt like it was going to be secure, I might do that. But yeah, kind of a cool concept. It works good in some applications, and I think it's kind of a neat thing that's a little bit different than a Swiss Army knife. So next up, let's talk about folders. I've probably used these the least, but they've come on a couple of trips. This is my standard kind of EDC carry knife I've had forever, this Bechmade. It's a good knife. They're heavy. They're kind of one-sided or one-purpose. They're just a knife versus a Swiss Army knife that's got multiple tools. They do get clogged up and gunky, but they are easier to operate with gloves. That's one thing I didn't mention about Swiss Army knives. Opening this up with a glove, impossible. Opening this up with a glove, possible. So these are sometimes nice. The negatives on these, they're heavier. They get clogged up sometimes with dirt and gunk, and they're not super great for batoning. My previous EDC carry to this was this, which was the Kestrel Blur. Decent knife, but I went batoning with it once, and you can hear it now. It just, the mechanisms, just unless you get one of the massive ones of these folders, they're just not that strong, and they're just not real good for stuff. I'd rather carry what I'm going to show next. But anyways, folders are an option. Not a huge fan. Expensive, multiple working parts, and they're heavier. And I honestly, even the steel in this Bechmade, I feel like I can get this sharper than I can get this. I don't know why. It could just be me, but I feel like I can get this sharper and do some crazy curls with this, whereas this is just marginal. So now we're going to transition from some of the ultralight things that I use now into a little bit heavier things that I used to use when I was doing more trips on the East Coast and batoning more wood, splitting things up, things of that nature. I don't really have any need to baton or cut wood here in California. It's too dry. You can start a fire with no knife, no tools whatsoever. So for me, knives now are more of a little utility thing than it is any type of wood processing tool. But I still have a deep ingrained internal bushcrafter in me, so I'm always thinking of wood processing and stuff. When I first started backpacking, and I went right from kind of bushcrafty stuff to like backpacking things, I was like, I need to get something a little bit lighter than some of my bigger custom-made bushcraft knives. So this was my first knife. You can see it's got a real cool patina on it. This is the good old classic Mora carbon steel. Super inexpensive. It's only like, you know, 10, 12 bucks, something like that. And really sharp, epic handle. Probably like one of the best handles of any knife you can get for 10 bucks. And this is a great knife, and you can't really, you know, you can break these, but they're extremely durable. I was using this for a long time, which is like a custom Kydex sheath, and I think when I was a kid, I watched Operation Dumbo Drop about 300 times as a kid, if anyone remembers that movie with Danny Glover. And I thought he was so cool because he had a K-bar that was strapped to his little strap right here. I thought that was like the coolest thing as a kid. So when I first got into backpacking, I thought like, hey, I need that too. So for a while I had this like corded on, and then I think I had an elastic band or something to my backpacking strap, which made it super easy to get to. Like you could just pull it straight out and it was right there. But yeah, don't do that anymore. I did that for a couple of trips, but it's overkill. But these are great knives. I do like this custom Kydex sheath better than the standard, you know, floppy one that comes with it. This thing is in there. So that's a great knife if you're kind of new to backpacking, or you're in a transitional between bushcraft and more lightweight type stuff. This is a great option. And the final knife I'll go over today, we're now getting well outside the realm of lightweight backpacking and getting more into what I use on a canoe trip or a bushcrafty more trip. But I just wanted to mention this. This is one of my all-time favorite knives. Probably is my all-time favorite knife that isn't a custom knife. The Fall Neven F1, I probably say it wrong. I do love this thing. This is what I use typically on canoe trips because it's stainless steel. It's big. It's got this. It's big, but it's still relatively lightweight for a big fixed blade knife. And the sheath, super light, very secure. This knife has been with me all over the place. It is stainless steel. It does have some little rest marks starting on it. So it's been through its fair share, but this is one of my all-time favorite fixed blade knives. I have carried this before backpacking when I've done trips where we're needing to process wood, but this is mainly my kind of canoe knife. It's a great knife. Probably stays the sharpest of almost any of the fixed blades I have, even though it's stainless and I have some other carbon steel knives, but this stays super sharp. The handle is okay. I think actually the Mora handle's a titch better. This doesn't have any belly to it, so it's a bit flat. But again, if you're in a kind of transitional phase or you're in super wet environments, I do recommend this knife. It's very thick, very strong, probably complete and total 100% overkill for anything like West Coast backpacking that I'm going to do. So I don't really carry this out here, but I do like it. It's a great knife. I have a lot of good memories and admiration for that knife. So hopefully that was helpful. Just to summarize, 98% of the time, if I'm just doing lightweight backpacking, no fires on the West Coast, it's a classic. And then maybe if I'm feeling dangerous or fun that day, I'll bring this along. They both weigh absolutely next to nothing. This is just a titch easier to carry. Not a fan of folders, never have been. And then if you want to get into the more heavy looking type of knives, definitely the Mora is a good entry level, and the F1 is one of my all-time favorites. So hopefully that's helpful to someone. I know knives are very, I would say, personalized tools depending on the person, the skills, what they want to do. These are just my opinions of what has worked well for me. So may not work well for you, but that's what I like. Hopefully that was helpful to someone. If you got any questions, please let me know. Stay tuned for future videos with Luna. She's all grown up now. I'll be doing a video with her in the next couple of weeks.